Hey, it's Doug. This week we're doing something special, a feed drop, which we've done before. We're featuring an episode from the Building Better CMOs podcast. It's hosted by Greg Stuart. This episode, produced by my good friend in San Francisco, Eric Johnson of Lightning Pod FM, it's packed with some great insights. In this episode, you're going to hear from Linda Boff, the Global Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at General Electric, GE. She's discussing the importance of translating marketing efforts into business terms and the concept of punching above your weight with a small marketing team. I can relate. Linda shares her experiences and strategies for making marketing a powerful tool for business growth. We're back next week with another episode of Stories and Strategies. I hope you enjoyed the feed drop.
I wasn't talking in business terms, and it took getting up there, oh gosh, too many times, 3, 4, 5 times, until I realized I was speaking French and they were speaking English and we weren't going to connect. And it was not their job to understand me. It was my job to put it in business terms.
Welcome to Building Better CMOs, a podcast about how marketers can get smarter and stronger. I am Greg Stuart, the CEO of the nonprofit MMA Global. And that voice you heard at the top is Linda Boff, the Global Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at GE. She has been with the company more than 21 years and a CMO for almost a decade. She's also a senior advisor to private equity firm Citation Capital. Today in the podcast, Linda and I are going to talk about punching above your weight with a small marketing team, the problem with calling B2B marketing B2B, and the danger of only talking to other marketers and not the rest of the C-suite. Now, this podcast is all about the challenges marketers face and unlocking true power that marketing can have. Linda Boff is going to tell us how she did it right after this. So, Linda, welcome to Building Better CMOs. I'm so excited to be doing this with you.
Greg, thanks so much. I've been really looking forward to it. And on the heels of Possible, I feel particularly privileged.
I know. How exciting. Most things of success are born out of a desperation's a little too strong, but they're born out of mistakes and problems, right? So basically, MMA had a terrible U.S. events business. I mean, we currently run 41 conferences in 16 countries. So I have a huge event portfolio around the world, but the U.S. one was really bad. And so I went to the board and I says, listen, I got to rethink this whole thing. I got to come up with something completely different. So I went and hired a consultancy out of the UK to help me redesign what was missing in the marketplace. What they came up with is all we needed was a giant conference expo that marketing could get together because we really didn't have it. CES is only partially attended. Kelly Kenny, my board chair, will be there, but she's there to sell phones, not to talk with the marketers. And Canned Lines it's a little too bougie. I mean, it's fun, but a little bit too much, right? I mean, the whole industry doesn't get to go, correct?
It's a tad bougie.
It's a tad bougie. Oh, that's how we're framing that now. But there wasn't a marketing event for marketers.
Yeah, no, hats off. I didn't get to go to Possible last year, and I had real FOMO. All of a sudden, it felt as though there was this conversation coming out of Possible and people talking about what had happened on stage and frankly, what hadn't happened on stage, but just sort of this gathering of marketers. And so I was thrilled to be there this year and, sort of as advertised, I thought it was a great conference, good people, good discussions and needed, talking to each other is important.
And what do you think about the name Possible? I mean, you're a CMO. Couldn't be any better than that, right?
I was just going to say, is there a better name
than
Possible
my God.
for a marketer? I mean, anything's possible. No, it was, how did you come up with the name? I'm kind of curious.
So I have a guy on my team, his name is Vasilis Bakopoulos. He's an ex-strategy planner from the agency world, right? He used to work at Digitas, and he's been with me now over 8 years. And so when the board was kind of deciding if we should do this, because, this is a for-profit business and we raised money, it was kind of unusual for a nonprofit to go down the path. I didn't have the money, the capital to get the talent. And so he went through a process. We went through an archetype analysis about what was the A&A event, what was Canned Lines, like what were these other events? And we got to the sense it was either bold or it was kind of where Disney sits in this sense of magic. I don't remember what exactly the archetype was, but it was a sense of endless possibilities. And we're kind of like, this is kind of what marketing needs because we're feeling a little beaten upon, as an industry, right? Don't you think sometimes marketers feel a little put upon sometimes? Or it feels like there's a lot of negative news, or maybe that's just the media reporting. I don't know.
I think it's it's a little bit of both. I think there are too many times we hang our heads and we shouldn't.
Yeah, okay.
I kind of pinch myself most days. We're the soul of the company.
Yeah.
We get to play this role in helping businesses grow. But I do think there is some moaning and groaning. And so the idea of possible plays against that. And frankly, a lot of what I heard in a lot of the conversations, I think were, what does leadership mean in marketing and how do we drive that?
Well, it's certainly what MMA is out to do. I mean, we're out to try to find every problem there is and fix it and come up with a real validated, not always just science, because that can take things in a slightly different direction, but like a validated position that we know that that's truth and fact. I don't know if you heard me open the event, but I used it last year. We have a tendency to believe things that logically make sense, but just aren't true. And it's because nobody's taken the time. The agencies aren't put in a position to do that anymore. It's bad. The consultancies aren't asked to do it. So who is? It's kind of the unique niche of the MMA.
Yeah, no. I think it's terrific. I was thrilled to be there. Yeah. And the fact that this was really only year 2.
It's crazy.
I think speaks volumes to the potential.
And what is the opportunity there? Sort of it felt to us. In fact, when I did it, Alan Tigason, who was at that time head of Americas and sales for Google, had said, I said, I'm thinking about maybe we should do a big conference expo with the industry. He goes, it's so funny. We were just talking internally at Google and we were saying, wow, there really are no good marketing oriented events. Isn't that funny? I thought, wow, well, there you go.
That's really interesting.
Hey, now, Linda, I didn't really set this up well. You and I have known each other now for a lot of years. So let's just be clear for everybody kind of sort of listener knows. Okay, so at GE, that may have come up in the pre-read, but you're Global Chief Marketing and Communications Officer and Chief Learning Officer and President of the GE Foundation.
Those have been my corporate roles. That's right. Now, Greg, we are at a point at GE where we have split into 3 companies.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But that has been my purview for, I've been CMO for nearly a decade, coming up on a decade. The other 2 roles, the learning, culture, it's been about 6 years, and foundation maybe 4 or 5 years. So, sort of at a pearl as I went.
What is a chief? I don't know if I've ever known anybody who had a chief learning officer title. We're here to talk to you as CMO, but I want to hear what that means.
It's really interesting, I think, because all of us in corporate America have some form of training and development. GE, over the many, many years, this was something we have emphasized. We had a corporate facility that people would come to and spend sometimes weeks on campus learning. We did a lot of online learning, virtual, even well before it became as big a thing as it is. So learning, training, development has been sort of a core to GE. About 6-7 years ago, we started looking at training in a different way when our new CEO, Larry Culp, took the reins. So that was fall of 18, so more like 5 years ago, which was how do we think about training less from the point of view of bringing people to us and more with this idea of how do we get the rank and file to go to our factories, to go to the place where we are making things so that we can get even closer to the products that are going to our customer. So why does this make any sense in the world for somebody with a CMO title to be doing it? I'd say there are a couple things. One is we tried to innovate in our learning in a way that we had not done before. We took what we were doing and literally flipped it on its head.
Wow.
And I think there was a level of innovation there that the person who was at that point head of human resources knew me with a kind of an innovator's head, thought I could do a good job on that. And I think there's also something about how a brand works inside a company as well as outside a company is really important. I've always believed that our ambassadors are inside as well as outside.
So equally to teaching them maybe new skills or aptitudes or so on, or, you're also saying they need to understand the company, and the CMO is the one who knows what that is. Kellen Kenny did a presentation last year at MMA CEO CMO Summit. She talked about how she had rolled out a new position for AT&T. Only you can probably consider how massive that job really is.
I don't even think I can appreciate it. It is.
Really?
I bow down even further to Kellen, and I already am a bit of a worshiper. So, it had to be tough.
But what was interesting is that she said something that I still remember now, almost a year later. She goes, I needed everybody, even those on the line or linemen, I think if that's a choice of words, they needed to know how they contributed to the mission and purpose of this company. And I went, wow, that's a very powerful idea. If you can get all the way to those who are stringing the telephone poles to know their role in the thing based on that mission statement, very powerful, I thought. And you're right, only a CMO would get that.
There's the old story, which hopefully I won't butcher too much, of John F. Kennedy visiting somebody in the bowels of NASA. I think it was a janitor who was cleaning the place up and saying to him, "What's your job?" And he said, "My job is to put a man on the moon." And I think that is the essence of really driving something all the way down in an organization so that you're not breaking stones, you're building cathedrals. And I think, wow, that's a big thing if you're at AT&T or GE or any of these big companies, which is for the people who are doing the hard work to feel as though they are just as committed as what the CEO is doing to what's going to grow and move the company.
Yeah, granted, an army could do more than an individual. So that's a very powerful idea. That's interesting. Oh, one other thing here before we kind of go on. So 21 years at GE?
Yeah, I think it's between 20 and 21, but who's counting?
That's what LinkedIn says. Who's counting? Well, I did. So there's not a lot of that kind of longevity in the world today.
Not a lot.
Why? Why'd you stay? I mean, first off, the company's nothing like when you started, I imagine, is part of your answer. Not even the same.
It is similar in the DNA and the purpose and the impact. Yeah. And it is wildly dissimilar in the portfolio.
Oh,
so when I joined the company, we owned NBC. Mm-hmm. In fact, as you know, I went to work at a division of NBC.
Yeah. You were the CMO for iVillage. Exactly. I mean, that was one of the big pioneers. That was one of the 10 top internet properties to start the business off. Yep, I remember.
We owned GE Lighting and Appliances. There is still GE Lighting and Appliances. We don't own them. We owned all kinds of businesses, water, security, that we are no longer in. So the portfolio looks completely different. Of course, what looks the most different is we're now 3 separate publicly traded independent companies. There are 3 GEs. I joined one. Now there are 3 stocks, 3 boards, 3 CEOs. So that is completely different. But what isn't different, and this will, I hope, start to answer your question of why in the world stay anywhere for that length of time. The purpose of the company, the Edisonian, I figure out what the world needs and then I try to solve it, I try to invent it, is unchanged. We're a company, I like to say a capital P purpose company. We think a lot about the impact of what we have the privilege of doing, providing energy to a third of the world. It's a lot of people.
That's true. Energy equipment to a third of the world.
A third of the world.
Oh my God.
A third of the world has power because of GE. Our planes with our engines take off every 2 seconds. So as you and I are talking, there are probably, give or take 900,000 people in the sky right now.
Wow.
With our engines under wing and our healthcare equipment, MRIs and CTs and so much more, touches like 2 billion patients a year. So that is it makes you feel just this enormous pride to get to work on that. And I think the fact that we're a company that has invented so many things, we did invent the first jet engine. God, we invented the first TV broadcast. We invented the stock ticker. I mean, just so many things. I've tried, and my amazing predecessor, Beth Comstock, and so many people on our team have tried to imbue that sense of innovation in our marketing. And that's really quite a treat to get to do that, to sort of say to ourselves, well, if we invented a jet engine, how do we bring that ethos to marketing? Not by being silly or doing marketing for marketing's sake, but really sort of that Edisonian heritage. So that's kept me there. It's a treat.
Wow. It's great. I mean, listen, you almost kind of get chills and sort of thinking about the proverbial standing on the shoulders of giants and really remaking the world in such a much better way. Like, why? I think the question would be, why would you ever leave that?
Well, when you split into 3 companies, that gives you a reason. But I think
okay.
I joke that we're the sons and daughters of Edison, but GE is a company that takes great pride in the fact that a lot of the work that we do is really hard. It is hard to manufacture offshore wind turbines. that are the length of a football field and do it with quality. It's hard to make the safest jet engines in the world.
I was going to say, like, you just look at jet. I mean, listen, I don't know about you, but I sit in enough planes. I still sit and go, how the hell did we do this? Really?
How the hell did we do it? And so it's humbling to be a servant of that, if you will.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a wonderful company. I've loved every minute of it.
I love it. Well, boy, we sure made iVillage look a little bit small, which I mentioned to you earlier. That I was supposed to be the fifth founder. Candace had asked me to join her with her and Robert Levitan, and I forget who else was there at the time. But I was excited. The moment I sort of passed, as I think Eric here said earlier, I was like the Pete Best of the Beatles. You know, I opted out early or something. I don't know. But
we could have used you. It was
that was a tough time, though. That was coming in off of the .com bust. You know,
it was a tough time. I think it was not a well understood time to be in a digital pure play business. And I think for the folks at NBC who understandably, it was broadcast business that had just spent, I think it was $600 million to purchase iVillage. iVillage's secret weapon was community.
Yeah.
It was the community bulletin board, as you may remember, which were the earliest possible precursor to social media, right? It was people who just wanted to connect with each other. But how do you monetize that? That was not an easy thing.
Yeah, it was born out of the concept of AOL. AOL was big on that sort of idea. Yeah, because it was done out of, I don't know if Candace did specifically out of Greenhouse Networks. It was AOL sort of a subsidiary, but she was good with Ted and, others there, and sort of that picked up that ethos. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I will say, just to spend one more moment there, sometimes I think I wouldn't be in the job that I'm in today if it hadn't been for iVillage. Here's the reason.
Is that right? Oh, wow. Why is that? That's interesting.
Yeah, I got a front row seat at Digital 1.0, if it was even Digital 1.0.
Barely 1.0 at that point.
Barely
barely
1.0.
Yeah.
I had to learn search marketing
in
order for us to do business. I had to be able to explain why a digital portal made sense to companies like Walmart. And as I did it, I had to learn those things.
Yep.
It was just a great experience being on the field. And when I went back, Greg, into GE in a marketing communications role, I was able to ask questions that I don't think I even would have understood, let alone been able to ask, had I not had that experience. So I'm blessed for doing it.
To be fair to the business, so that was just, you started there just as I was finishing my term as sort of, in essence, the first CEO of IAB. I had to step in to write. I wrote the Global Impression Standard, which we now call Viewability. That standard was developed globally by me and a guy named George Ivey at the MRC, because we had no measurement. I mean, we were just making shit up all the time, quite honestly. I mean, it was unbelievable. We had done analysis. We figured out that impression counts could be anywhere from plus 100% to minus 50%. So that means if you bought $10 million of inventory, you either got 20 million or 5 million you didn't know. And the same ad servers in similar companies were measuring that kind of dramatic change. Like, we were really having to put in the underlying infrastructure. But you're right, there was a lot of, I don't know if I'd call them shenanigans, but there was just so much foundation that had to put in. And you really had to, as a marketer, kind of pay it. It's no wonder that I think marketers mistrusted the internet people at some level, because there just was a lot of stuff that hadn't been worked out and figured out yet.
A lot of spray and pray.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
And I think there was no malfeasance. I think we were all trying to understand the power of something. We just were beginning. We're taking baby steps.
Yeah, there was a little bit of shenanigans, actually, Linda. I mean, listen, I was running the IB. I worked for the publishers. I'll tell you what happened. I went to somebody one time. I said, listen, actually, I'll tell you exactly what it was. This is so funny. This is a Wayback Machine here. Then we'll get on to more other topics we're here for. But I went to the CEO of a public internet company at the time, and I said, hey, we have figured out, we were doing some separate analysis. So basically, I created multi-touch attribution. Rex Briggs did the math of that, and then I figured out how to popularize that. But we were doing MTA. So it put us inside server logs. We saw all data was going on. And what we had discovered is that as much as 15 to 25% of inventory is being served to international audiences by these domestic properties. Now, when you were a media person or a marketer, you bought Time Magazine, you knew that was U.S. When you bought NBC, you knew that was U.S. The question had never come up. And so there was inventory that was going to these international audiences because internet now was this global medium that we didn't really fully understand. And I went to a public company CEO and I said, listen, you're not disclosing, or did you know this? One. And he said, yeah, how do you think I'm making my quarterly numbers? And I go, well, I would consider the fact that we don't disclose that to marketers to be stealing. And I'll never forget, he said, you better keep your effing mouth shut.
Oh, boy.
Isn't that a shame? Yeah, I don't think you get away with that today in the world. I think we've really tried to clean up that stuff. But there was a lot of those kind of it was some bad practices. Thank God we got it cleaned up and we created a medium and, the whole world's moved digital. And I think we have some trust, although some anxiety about it still. But there was a lot of stuff that was crazy.
Yeah, no. It's come so far. I mean, now I think in some ways, everything is so measurable in many good ways that we forget what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, or we take convenient measures like click. Okay, listen, we're here for a whole nother reason. We'll see if Eric, a producer, wants to cut that out later. We'll let that go. That was maybe just fun. It'll be
our trip down memory lane.
It'll be in the archives. They'll find it in a cassette tape someday on the floor of a studio somewhere. Okay, listen. Here's the top: building better CMOs. So the fundamental thesis of the podcast and the MMA, as I sort of mentioned to you, and the sort of reason we started Possible, was that marketing can be better. There's ways that we can sort of improve things, that there's power of marketing that we can unlock in many ways. So the question I always like to ask people, of CMOs in particular, and those who've stature and have been around the business for a long time, is what do you think, in your opinion, in your view, just one item, that you think we as marketers don't necessarily either, like we don't fully understand, we either maybe don't give enough credence to it, like, it's in there, but it's not a top priority. Maybe we miss it. Maybe we know nothing about it. You can take it any way you want, but I'm always looking as the head of the trade association, like I'm looking for stuff to go fix. So I'm building a list every time I hear it. So what's on your top of the list that we as marketers really would be better off being much better at?
I don't know that it's, Greg, that we don't know it, but I think if we are not answering as marketers the fundamental question of what did you do today to move the business forward, I think we are not serving our companies, our services, our customers well. Because in the end of the day, that is the marketer's role, to drive growth for our companies with our key stakeholders. And it's so damn simple that it can be easy to kind of spin that out. But if we're not inherently in that fulcrum of what moves business forward, if it's a public company, for our share owners, for our employees, as I said to you, I think then it's just noise. Now, the noise can be fun, it can be entertaining, but if we're only entertaining each other, what are we doing?
Right.
And so I think it's that simple. What did you do to grow the business today?
I can't even tell you. Again, I think I said this earlier, I like have goosebumps. So I was a big agency guy. And then I went to sort of the .com and I worked at a lot of small businesses. And my most important phrase to people, especially if they had not been around startups, I guarantee if you ask any of them today, they would confirm this. I said it so many times. This is required in a start. When you're a small company like that, when you're just emerging, the question is, what have you done today to move the business forward? I'm a little flabbergasted to hear somebody of a company your size to say, well, have I really done something? And listen, a little bit harder to move. I mean, I don't want to get into parse that kind of question. That's sort of irrelevant. But that orientation to what have I done today to make the GE business better? I've never heard that from anybody.
Our CEO, Larry Culp, is a disciple of lean management, what's called the Toyota production system. I will not attempt to give anybody a lesson on lean on this podcast, but in its purest form, lean is about continuous improvement.
Okay. Got it.
Some of those steps are small, some of those steps are big, but it is always about how do we get better. And I think that mentality has, and I've worked for Larry for 5.5 years. I don't think I fully appreciated the value of that simple idea of how do you improve every single day. And listen, Greg, to your point, if you're a small startup, from Monday to Friday, there's probably a lot you can do where you turn the crank and you see something. GE's big, it takes a lot to turn, but in the last 5 years, our stock, as one trigger of measurement, has improved 290 points as compared to that same time frame for the S&P 500.
Wow.
We've changed our portfolio. We've separated into 3 companies, delevered by over $100 billion. Now, I promise I won't turn this into sort of a GE fandom show. It is more to prove the point that that was not because of what marketing did. It wasn't because of what HR did. It wasn't because of what legal did. It was because of what we did collectively. Our CEO gets and deserves the lion's share of that because of his vision and his commitment to seeing a North Star and driving us there. But this was a we thing in every sense of the word. If it wasn't as clear to me as a marketer before that, it sure is clear now.
Wow. So great leadership, a big deal. Clarity of how we execute a vision against that, a really big deal. Are you willing to say how big your marketing team is there?
I'll give a sense of it. We're 3 companies. So when we were one company, God, we were never more than about 50, 60 people.
Wow. Small.
The GE model in corporate marketing has been for a number of years to have a group of people who are, I believe, best in class, really, really good at what they do, with extensions through some fairly terrific agencies. And we are proud of those partnerships. Some are very, very long in the making. GE and BBDO have been partners for 100 years. Some of them are much, much more recent. And it's a plethora of folks, but it has always been a fairly small team inside the company. I will not give a number to our marketing budget, but it has been a decidedly hardworking team.
I think they say punching above your weight is the
Very much so. I sometimes say shouting louder than we spend, but either of these will work nicely.
Okay. Talk a little bit about translating the marketing into sort of the business objectives. Go back to I don't want to lose sight of that core point because I do think it's so crucial. Like, how do you do that? How do you know that? Give examples. Let's go.
So I think it starts with what the narrative for the company is.
Okay.
What is it that we want people, as I say, both inside and outside, to believe? For us, and I love this because it's a great discipline, we start our narrative with a messaging triangle. What are the 3 things you have to believe in order to want to do business with us?
Okay.
In order to believe that we can do better, that we can delever, et cetera. So number 1 is a messaging narrative that everybody in the C-suite agrees with and that we hold so near and dear that it is consistent. It goes back to what we were talking about before. Every person in an organization articulate it.
Yep.
On a good day, you want to believe that, but certainly you want to believe that by consistency and repetition, people understand what it is we're playing for.
Yep. Got it.
That's number 1. Number 2 is to figure out what role marketing can play in driving growth.
Okay.
And to figure that out at a GE, at an industrial long cycle business, is really different than what a McDonald's or an AT&T that's looking at either same store sales or performance week after week. We might put a jet engine into the market in concept, and the first one will roll out of the factory 10 years later.
Wow.
So for us, this is building confidence in our ability to do something. I am a huge believer, have been, and probably always will be, in the power of a story told creatively and beautifully. I just think that finding that, as my friend David Lubars at BBDO loves to say, that single creative nugget that is often a very simple but unique and ownable way to tell your story serves the company really well. And for a company like GE, we're 133 years old, turned 133 at possible. See, I knew I could work possible in there. You have to find ways to not just tell that story, but to make what in our case is the important interesting.
What is the story, by the way? Go ahead and give me I'm just curious while we're on it.
It's kind of the story of a company that is constantly thinking about how to build a better world. Now, that is really, really 20,000 feet. So how do you do that? We do that through figuring out what the future of flight needs to be at aerospace.
Yeah.
We do it through precision healthcare at our GE healthcare business. GE, now Vernova, is the name of our third public company, our energy company. We do it by figuring out how to both electrify and decarbonize. But none of that, Greg, matters if we can't find a way to do it that is human and approachable and showing up the way a person would, not the way a big company would.
So hey, let me ask you a funny question. How much time do you have to spend sort of gathering the support of the C-suite around this? And by the way, before you answer that question, I'm going to give you the answer, I think.
Good.
I have a feeling just listening to you, Linda, that everybody kind of really looks to you to provide that sort of anchor center vision of some regards of where we're going.
You're kind. I would never say that. I think that to work at GE, there's sort of a DNA that I think never changes.
Okay.
There's a formula that never changes. And that is, I go back to Edison, we figure out what the world needs and we try to solve it. Our always on brief, and this is truly an always on brief, is to make our marketing as innovative as the products we make so that when people see our marketing, they're reminded of what the company is and the trust, believability, and innovation that has been part of the company for a century plus. If I engender leadership, which you're kind to say, I think it is a bit of a reminder that that is who we are.
Yeah.
And at the same time, trying to always figure out, Greg, new ways to say that. Sometimes it's with a creator. Sometimes it's putting a drone show in the sky the night before we spin it to 3 companies. Sometimes it's through long form. Sometimes it's through short form. Sometimes it's creating our own event, participating in others. I think what I've been able to do with my team is to find innovative ways to tell that story.
Connecting it to the business and talk to me a little bit about that. How does that work for you? How does it work for GE? Because listen, I mean, this is the underlying issue, right? Marketers are not always great at talking in business talk. We talk marketing talk. We don't talk business talk.
Oh my God, I love this question.
Okay, go.
So when I got back to GE from iVillage, I thought that my job was to help our business leaders get the digital religion.
Okay.
I thought if I stood up enough times and talked about the value of two-way communications and the opportunities that digital had opened up and how as a company that sold to business executives, we needed to be discoverable and we needed to be available on search, I was blowing in the wind.
Why?
Because it was too early. I wasn't talking in business terms.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't using business language, and it was a mistake. And it took getting up there, oh gosh, too many times, 3, 4, 5 times, kind of pounding my fist on the table until I realized I was speaking French and they were speaking English and we weren't going to connect. And it was not their job to understand me. It was my job to put it in business terms. And I think as marketers, if we ever veer away from the language of our business, our C-suite, our share owners, our customers, do it at your own peril.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's a real mistake. You know, the most interesting project that the board asked me to do about a year and a half ago at a board meeting, they said, Greg, we want you to help CMOs know how to speak to CFOs. My inside voice at the time in the board meeting, which I didn't verbalize because, for obvious reasons, I said, what do you mean you don't know how to talk to the CFO? I'm not really sure what to do with that information. And by the way, the person who said it was a Wharton MBA. So I was like, not sure I'm really tracking. What they really wanted, though, which did make a lot of sense to me, is that one, there is a nuance to talking business talk. And so there is an element of that we've kind of now brought to the table. On what they really wanted, they wanted all of us marketers to talk the same language to all CFOs, that there was a consistency, there's a pattern recognition in how we do that. I do think that makes an awful lot of sense. If a doctor's having a problem, we don't need every doctor to explain the problem of the patient differently if it's the same damn problem. We need to have a common language around things. We never have a standardized approach.
I think that's right. So,
Go ahead.
so
You can disagree.
Yeah. I don't know. Let me talk it for a moment and let me get there. So,
Go.
I have had the blessing to be part of every earnings preparation for many years.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
I sit on all the prep calls. I help with the script, the press release, the talking points, the messaging. I am in the room with our IR teams, our CFO, obviously our CEO, general counsel, etc. I cannot do a CFO's job. No mistake.
Got it. Understood.
Nor do I covet that as much as all the rest of the C-suite believes they can do marketing's job. I know I cannot.
The rest of them are all doing marketing as a side hustle. I know it. Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I value what I've learned in terms of being able to understand and speak the language of finance. And I guess I wonder, I do think it's largely transferable. Now I'm coming around to your point. I mean, every company, may talk about free cash flow differently or may talk about EBITDA differently or top line, bottom line. But I think it's the language of business. It's the language of Wall Street. You have to know that. You certainly have to know it in a public company.
You would certainly be better off to know that, I think, at a real substantive level. Yes.
Yeah. I'd be very uncomfortable if I didn't.
I totally think so. Okay. So let me do this, though. Let me go back. So listen, it's very hard in a B2B company. It's hard in a consumer business when you have lots of data and multi-touch attribution and, all sorts of measurement systems and so on. But it's really hard in a B2B, especially as you mentioned for the reason, listen, the purchase cycles are long, they're enterprise sales, there's multi-party sort of, blah, 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 often driven by sales. What is the state of connecting the B2B marketing to actual, I don't know, can I go as far as sales performance or business growth? What is the state of that for you? It sounds like you've really thought about these and your team has.
Well, I'm going to take umbrage at B2B and B2C because I have always firmly believed, Greg, that if we don't approach our customers as just regular humans, B to H, we are making a mistake because we might do really shitty marketing if we said to ourselves, God, what would an airline executive want that's different than what somebody who likes and absorbs what is interesting wants? So I have always sort of taken that line.
I hear the point, but enterprise sales are called multiple decision makers.
Yeah,
that's different than often consumer, versus a household. The cycles are sooner,
It's fewer hops.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Let's agree on that one. I think that there are a couple things. One is we have tried always to be conscious about connecting air war, ground war. We have plenty of product marketers across GE. And when we have a campaign of sorts out there, if we are doing that without connectivity to the people who are issuing lead gen forms and gathering marketing sales leads and converting marketing qualified leads into sales qualified leads, again, we're losing opportunities. So I think we've done a good job. And I think for marketers similar to me in similar spaces with longer cycle, I think thinking about high value tasks, really important.
Yeah. Okay.
One that I think is incredibly important, and we don't talk about it enough as an industry, is strong middle funnel content. I think we go to the top of brand awareness. I think we go to the bottom and, what's your CAC and what's driving last click and all the rest of it. I think for great marketers, thinking about how to connect the emotion and passion of the top with the action of the bottom, I think that's a space that we could all get better at.
That's really interesting. I've not heard anybody say that, and yet it's kind of an obvious point. Can you give an example of how you all do that? Think about that, or is there something very practical?
Yeah, I mean, I can, and I think we're getting better at it. I don't think we've cracked the code, but I think we've done some smart things. We did, for instance, our GE Vernova business did a podcast not as popular as yours called Cutting Carbon, which was all about, as the name indicates, how do you cut carbon? And we did, I think we're on season 5 of this, getting that content right for an audience who really cares about that is super important. So I think it's finding what content matters to a group of stakeholders who are going to pay attention to that. I think I mentioned earlier, I worked for a wonderful, wonderful woman, Beth Comstock.
Oh, yeah. We all know Beth. She's the best.
A deserved legend. And Beth used to say B2B doesn't mean that you have to be boring. And I think that's the mistake that can be made, which is the content can be dreary and dull.
So is the middle funnel then a matter of sort of extolling I would tend to think of that as sort of, if there's brand awareness, then there's in the middle, why am I kind of forgetting it? Sort of there's the elements of it, the brand.
I think it has the brand attributes, but it's also has
the brand
at
attributes,
times product specificity.
But brand attributes and sort of angles and precisions, and then sort of maybe even some additional sort of connection to that, personal connection to it. But you know that they're maybe not ready to buy, but you're keeping them warm or moved along. Yeah.
Yeah, you're moving them down the funnel, you're nurturing them along, but you're doing it in super interesting ways.
Yeah. I like that as an idea. I think you're right. I don't think we sort of break that down and sort of think that through.
I don't think so. And I don't think we're as creative in terms of omni-channel in the middle as we can be.
Yes. Yeah. No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah. Very interesting. You said that marketing can sometimes be siloed by others, you said, or by yourselves even. You want to talk about that point again?
Yeah, no, I would love to. I think if you can have or be the best marketer in the entire world, but if the conversations that you're having are simply amongst yourselves, your team, your fellow marketers, and they're not bridging across the C-suite, they're not with your CIO, they're not with folks in finance, they're not with folks in legal, HR, et cetera. I think you're forcing yourself away from the table and saying marketing plays a different role. We are somehow a different species.
Right.
Versus we are here with you, helping figure out what do we need to do today to grow the business. And I think that silo is an unfortunate one. I think sometimes it can be seen as a little bit of, well, marketers don't get their hands dirty. Marketers have a language, as you and I talked about, that's all their own.
Yeah.
They can be dilettantes.
Some.
They can be a little bit precious. Some. So I think it can feel as though marketers aren't there to do the heavy lifting. And of course, marketing needs to do heavy lifting.
Yes. I'm going to shift angles here a little bit. You ready?
Yeah.
What's the best advice that anybody's ever given you? And if you can, who was it? Do you remember the points in your career where people have said things to you that you went, oh my God, they're so right? Maybe it's a mentor. Maybe it's just somebody else. Often it'd be somebody in a leadership position. Maybe it could be a partner at your level, but what's the best advice you were ever given?
There's a woman who wrote a book called Fast Forward. Her name is Lisa McCarthy, and she's coached any number of different teams. And she gave me a piece of advice in one of these workshops that I have given to countless others. And that is to separate in your head the stories from the facts.
What's that mean?
And I think as leaders, we are often leading teams, big teams, and you can get in your head something that is not based at all in reality. It can be a remark somebody made in a meeting. It can be a feeling that you get that you are not bringing your best work or self, and it's not based at all in fact. And I think as marketers, we do deal in stories.
We do.
Sometimes. We do. In fact, I love those stories that we deal in. But I think when you're a leader, and frankly, this can be true, Greg, if you're an independent producer, sometimes your confidence doesn't hold up as well because you're telling yourself something that others believe and it has no basis in reality.
You don't by chance have an example of that, do you? Or where that came up with you from, Lisa? Was there something happening at the moment? Do you remember? Or?
Let me think back to where I was then. It was early days of being a CMO.
Okay.
And I had come after this legend. And I remember thinking, God, how am I going to do this? Am I ever going to be good enough?
Totally. We're all plagued with that voice.
I think we all are. And I think a decade later, do I ever feel that way? My God, of course I do. But I've had the privilege of working on so many different projects, doing so many different campaigns, working for 3 CEOs, leading teams, and I have more facts than I do stories. And that helps.
So it's kind of your experience, so maybe somewhat your pattern recognition of situations. I do feel sometimes, if I can say, I sometimes feel like today, I feel like I see the whole game board. I see the whole thing. I see the world in a way different than I did when I was younger, when I was sort of affected by doubt. I feel like it just kind of makes sense. I get it. I get the bank shots. I understand the angles. I don't know. It's very funny being this age and seeing the world that clear to me most of the time.
I love the way you just said that. I think it's pattern recognition. I think it's reps.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of reps.
Totally.
I've seen what good looks like. I've seen what really crummy looks like. I know how to be a better client. I know how to be a better leader. I think I know when to listen and when to talk.
I know how to ask better questions than ever. I'm astonished at the questions sometimes I feel like I can ask. I'm like, where did that come? I remember as a young professional not having the clarity of where I was going or what I was trying to accomplish or what I needed to get to understand the situation. This might be different than the point you make.
I think there's a lot that's related there. I think when you have the experience, the repetitions, the pattern recognition, you've scraped your knee.
Oh, so many times fall down. Yes.
And, you can scrape your knee once, you can scrape your knee twice, but hopefully by the third or fourth time, when you're in that sort of that game board looks similar, you know it and you're able to lead through. And I think the facts present themselves differently.
I love that too. I tell my team often, I says, let's figure out what right looks like. Then we decide if we think we can do it. I get really bugged sometimes when people come to me and they'll say, oh, well, we can do this. I'm going, no. Let's go take that. What are the facts? What would be the best thing to do? What would be the ultimate thing? What's the best solution to this, whether we can do it or not? Okay, now we can put in the sort of governors like, okay, we can't do that. Now, okay, we can't do that. Okay, what's our fallback position? What's next? Because I think if you start sometimes what you can do, you end up in the wrong place all the time.
You reminded me of something I really love, which is this idea of interrogating the problem, not interrogating each other.
Totally, yeah. Be hard on the problem, not on the people. I'm not sure I do the best job of that, but yeah.
It's an area I've gotten a lot better at because the clarity is just there. If something's wrong, you try to get underneath it. As we say here at GE, you try to get to root cause. But root cause is about what's causing the problem. It's rarely each other. This was something I saw on one of the walls at Amazon years ago. What was it? Debate.
It's a debate and decide. And once you decide, there's no going back. I don't know if that's the actual phrase, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I love that. Let's debate it. And by the way, you know where that came up too? I think at least where I've seen that popularized is that Bezos really disagreed with them getting into the ad business. He did not want to do it. He rejected it. Lisa Unschneider was there as the first person on the ground to do that. And they debated it, and then they decided to do it. But once you decide, there's no going back. We go.
Disagree and commit.
Disagree and commit. Is that what it is? There we go. I love it. That's what it is. Yes, I love that. Let's go.
And I think the more you can do that, the faster you can move.
Totally. Because once you're all in, then we're not going to have this chitter chatter of sort of, people going around your back and saying like, oh no, I think you get in real trouble for that if you start back talking the thing. Yeah. Once everybody's committed. I think that's what they do. Yeah. Very smart. And by the way, I don't know any inside information, but my understanding it's a $47 billion business and it might be what's delivering all that shit to free for you. So listen, it worked out pretty well for them. Listen, Linda, this is exactly what I like to have on Building Better CMOs. This is exactly it. I don't know. Maybe it's the older I get, the more I have sort of the respect of people who have sort of really thought about their business and where they're going and what they're doing and have stayed in a place for a while. I used to jump around a lot when I was a kid, younger, in my profession. I always got new shiny objects. There was something new fun. I was a smart enough guy. I could figure stuff out. But I have a lot of value for sticking. I've been here 12 years. You've been there for 21. There's a lot of value to that pattern recognition. There's a lot to be said for that. And you just get a sense of clarity about how the world works, right? That's what I feel like I just heard from you today.
I am so glad I stayed at GE. I really am. I mean, there were moments for sure it would have been easier to leave than to stay. But here we are, 21 years later, 3 separate companies. I am so proud of the teams. I'm so proud of sort of, honestly, Greg, the value that we've delivered to our customers and our shareholders. It is a goosebumpy feeling. And my favorite part by far is I think along the way, the team and I helped people fall in love with the company. And it's a company that we fell in love with. So it's such a privilege to be able to bring others to see the GE we saw.
Oh my God. I can't think of a better way to close it. And that kind of commitment to what you're doing and the way that you work with the team, really, it is inspiring. Linda, I told you it wasn't about CMO worship. I realized I just dipped into that.
A little.
You converted me. See, I started and I said, what are the problems? And we ended up with, oh my God, it's so great. So there we go.
Well, maybe you fell in love a little with GE. So there you go. I'll take it. It's not about me. It's about GE.
It's like leprechauns. You have a magic spell of some kind. I don't know how that just happened. Listen, this was too much fun. We would definitely have to do it again. We'll have to find like some big project you're working on someday and we'll sort of go over it. I don't know. We'll come up with something. So Linda, thank you.
I love everything you've done at MMA and Possible on the podcast. And it's my pleasure to get to chat a little bit.
Thanks again to Linda Boff from GE for coming on Building Better CMOs. Check the description of this episode for links to connect with Linda. And if you want to know more about MMA's work to unlock the power of marketing, visit MMAglobal.com, or you can attend any one of the 41 conferences in 16 countries where MMA operates, or really write me, Greg, at MMAglobal.com. Now, thank you so much for listening. Tap the link in the description to leave us a review. And if you're new to the show, please follow or subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeart, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can find links to all those places and more at bettercmos.com. Our producer and podcast consultant is Eric Johnson from lightningpod.fm. Our project manager is Lily Mahoney. Artwork is by Jason Chase. This is Greg Stuart. I'll see you in 2 weeks.